You know what? I'm stubborn like that. I want to do things my way, and that's just how it's going to be. At the end of the day, I know the gold's there. We just got to make it pay off.
Rick loves taking big risks.
Is it smart? I don't know yet. Obviously, time will tell, but we all support him. I think this whole crew is big risk takers, and that's why we're here for them.
Rick Ness just bet roughly $700,000 in gold on a piece of dirt he tested with one shovel pan. 4 days later, the scale gives him his answer: 7.35 ounces. About $25,000. He needed 40. On camera, Rick stares at the gold and calls it terrible, calls it a big waste of time.
That's a big waste of time is what that is.
That's terrible.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Not even quite 2 ounces a day.
that's a big waste of time right there, yeah.
And here is the part that turns this from a bad cleanup into the worst gamble of his career. He already handed over half the price. The other half is owed in 2 weeks. At this rate, Rick Ness cannot pay. The 200-ounce gamble. Rick Ness walks away from his old ground and signs the deal that puts everything on Lightning Creek. The seller is Troy Taylor. The terms are paid in gold, not cash. 200 ounces total. 100 ounces handed over up front. 100 ounces owed inside a 2-week deadline. No way out, no second draft. Rick goes on camera and admits he made a classic Rick move. He saw a piece of ground. He made a quick decision. He bought it.
I did a classic Rick move, and I made a quick decision and bought this ground down at Lightning Creek. People that know me know I don't have a whole lot of patience. We gotta hope the gold's there, and we're gonna know soon.
People who know Rick Ness know he does not have a whole lot of patience. He hopes the gold is there. He says they are going to know soon. The ground itself is roughly 1,600 acres of Yukon wilderness, mostly untested. Rick ran the prospect tests himself before signing. 1 shovel pan, 1.5 yards of dirt. A few stray flakes that did not even add up to a full gram. That is the entire data set he used to make a 200-ounce decision. Rick says on camera this is probably one of the crazier things he has ever done. He says he is stubborn like that. He wants to do things his way, and that is just how it is going to be. He believes the gold is on this block. He just has to find it before the 2-week clock runs out on Troy Taylor. 200 ounces of gold is not an abstract number for a small operation like Nest Mining. 100 ounces sits in the Troy Taylor pile already, gone the day Rick signed. Another 100 has to come out of Lightning Creek before the deadline. Anything Rick produces above that 200-ounce mark is the only gold that actually lands in the Nest Mining ledger this season. Everything below it is just paying for a piece of ground. At today's gold price, 200 ounces lands somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000. That is the real size of the bet Rick just placed on Lightning Creek. Half of it is already gone. The other half is owed before the calendar turns over. There is no installment plan with Troy Taylor. There is no late fee. There is one number, one deadline, and one piece of ground that has to produce. Put another way, Rick is starting the season already 200 ounces in the hole on a piece of dirt he has barely tested.
It's a hell of a gamble. I made this purchase based off of like a 2-yard test, probably more like 1.5 yards, 1 pan with, a few grams, not even a gram of gold in it.
He needs to find that gold before he finds any gold of his own. Until those 200 ounces are out of the ground and on the scale, every cleanup is just paying down the cost of admission. The first cleanup at 7.35 ounces did not even cover the daily fuel and wage burn, let alone the deadline owed to Troy Taylor. Ryan Kent, the lead mechanic, rolls into camp late and gets the briefing on a deal that has already been signed. Ryan is visibly concerned. He watched Rick climb out of one bad season already. Now Rick has signed a new debt before the wash plant has even fired up, on ground nobody has properly tested. Ryan tells the camera that Rick loves taking big risks. Ryan is not sure yet if it is smart. He says time will tell. He says the whole crew are big risk takers, and that is why they are still here. He also says, you can make a plan and it sounds good and looks good on paper, but Lightning Creek is a finger cross moment. Rick admits to the camera that he may have jumped the gun. He bought a piece of dirt off a hunch and a handpan. He has more than 100 ounces to find before the 2-week deadline. The math is brutal and simple. He needs to find an ounce of gold for every 100 yards of dirt he processes, just to stay in the game. Rick tells the camera he has to get to Lightning Creek. Get the guys together, get a plan to set Rocky up, and get on the damn gold. The wash plant move is the first job, and the clock is already running. Every day Rocky sits idle is a day off the 2-week countdown. Every day off, the countdown moves Rick closer to a deadline he cannot make on the production rate Lightning Creek has shown so far. Dragging Rocky into position. Wash plant Rocky has been sitting all winter and is frozen into the ground. The fines underneath have set like concrete around the skids. Rocky is 32 feet wide. Rocky weighs 25 tons. The plant has to move 300 feet to reach the new cut at Lightning Creek. Before Rocky can move, the crew has to prep the cut itself. They have already stripped the shallow overburden off a 2-acre diamond-shaped section of ground. They have stockpiled 15 feet of pay dirt on top, ready to feed the plant. Everything is waiting on a wash plant that has not turned over since last season.
I'll drag it backward, and then the only thing I'm worried about is it's a real narrow area, the creek on one side and kind of a bank on that side. I'm gonna have to hug the creek to get this, that sluice box past that bank, otherwise it's drag and get all bent out of shape, so.
Rick climbs into a 750-ton class excavator and starts the drag. The track is narrow. Lightning Creek runs on one side. An unstable bank rises on the other. Rick puts spotters on both flanks of the wash plant. He tells them to yell every time the sluice swings the wrong direction. He cannot see directly behind the machine. He has to trust voices. Rick tells the camera there are 2 things he cannot do. He cannot bend the sluice boxes. He cannot put the plant in the river. He does not have another plant, and he does not have another sluice. Everything Lightning Creek will produce this season has to come through Rocky. Rick is hauling Rocky backward, hugging Lightning Creek to keep the sluice box clear of the bank. He tells the crew the only thing he is worried about is how narrow the area is, the creek on one side and a bank on the other. He says he is going to have to hug the creek to get the sluice box past the bank, otherwise it drags and gets bent out of shape. He tells everybody to be on both sides, both banks, yelling and screaming at him not to hit anything. The first pull rips Rocky free of the ice with a sound like cracking concrete. Nothing breaks on the wash plant. Nobody on the crew gets hurt. Rick says it himself. Nothing broke. Nobody got hurt. That counts as a win on a day that has not produced one yet. Rick says on camera that it is important to get this wash plant up and running. A lot of money is going out, and without gold coming in, it hurts. He says they have to get gold coming in right away. All they can do now is drag Rocky into place, set it up, and see what happens. The plant inches forward. The creek slips close on one side. The bank crumbles a little on the other. A Nest crew member calls out that the sluice box is getting too tight to the bank. Rick adjusts. Rocky keeps coming. Another spotter calls out that they got a little close. Rick admits he cannot see that side. He keeps pulling. 25 tons of steel arrive at the cut. Water lines get hooked up. Power gets connected. Rick stops second-guessing the move and decides to plug it in and see what happens. He tells the crew they should stop overthinking it. Rocky comes alive. Water rushes through the sluice. For a few seconds, Lightning Creek is finally a working mine. The bank collapses. The discharge water hits the back of the wash plant and starts tearing the bank apart. Not slowly. Within minutes, the ground behind Rocky is washing away. There is no big rock anchoring the bank. It is mostly topsoil and small roots, and the water is cutting through it like nothing. A Nest crew member calls it out first. He tells Rick the bank is washing off pretty bad on the other side.
Hey, Rick! Yeah, it's gonna wash off pretty bad right there.
Other side?
Yeah.
He says the bank is eroding way too fast. He says it is already creeping back toward the plant. There are too many vines and not enough big rock. The whole thing is just topsoil. Rick yells to shut Rocky down. Power off. Water off. The plant is dead before it has run a single load of pay dirt through the sluice. The bank has eroded back almost to the wash plant itself. Rick says on camera that if they ran it 10 more minutes, Rocky was going to go. Rick walks the bank with the crew. He says they have not even put any dirt through the sluice yet, and the whole bank is trying to wash away. He says they are going to have to yank Rocky out of there and build the bank up with rock. He says it is going to take some days. The fix is going to take days the season cannot afford. Big rock has to be hauled in from somewhere on the property. The bank has to be rebuilt and reinforced layer by layer. Rocky has to be yanked back, repositioned, and locked down before water can run through it again. Every day Rocky is down is a day off the 2-week deadline with Troy Taylor. Every day off the deadline is a day Rick needs to make up at the next cleanup. The bank fix is not just a technical problem. It is a clock problem. Every shovel of rock added to the bank moves Rick closer to the day Troy Taylor expects another 100 ounces of gold. Rick tells the camera the meter has been running since the day they got to the Yukon. Fuel out, wages out, equipment payments out, nothing in. He says it just sucks. He says they have been spending money since he got here and nothing has come in. He still needs 1,800 ounces of gold to break even on the season. Day 1 at Lightning Creek and the plant is already not running. Rick tells the crew, the bottom line is they are not sluicing today. The first gold way. The bank gets rebuilt with hauled in big rock, layered and packed back to the edge of the cut. Rocky gets fired up. The crew runs 4 full days at 100 yards an hour. 400 yards of pay dirt out of the new boulder cut, fed through the sluice, washed and rinsed and rifled. The target is 40 ounces, 1 ounce of gold for every 100 yards of dirt. 4 days of running at 100 yards an hour gets you there if the ground pays. That is the floor. Anything below 40 in Lightning Creek does not pay for fuel, wages, equipment, food, or the second 100 ounces owed to Troy Taylor. Rick frames it for the crew before the cleanup. He says they understand they are not mining the way they used to mine. It is different ground. It is up to them to prove there is something here. He says it is going to be non-stop. He says it is not going to be an easy season. He says he thinks this will be the toughest season the Ness crew has ever had with him. A Ness crew member tells the camera, "This is a weird one, starting on new ground again." He says they cannot come in on new ground and expect to hit the kind of valley they used to hit. He says he knows it is going to be a learning deal.
This is a weird one. It's starting on new ground again.
Yeah. We can't come in new ground and expect to hit Rally Valley, Vegas Valley kind of. I mean, I know it's going to be a learning deal, but
Yeah, it's definitely still a risk.
He says it is definitely still a risk. The cleanup happens the way it always does. Heavy concentrates come off the sluice. The crew runs them across a finishing table. Pans come out. Black sand separates from the gold. A Nest crew member tells Rick they grab the gold and weight it up. Rick tells him to count the numbers. The first weight comes in, then the next. The crew counts the bars one by one. The numbers are small. Rick is doing the math in his head as the count goes. Everyone around the scale already knows where this is heading. 7.35 ounces, about $25,000 worth. Across 4 days of running, less than 2 ounces per day. Rick stares at the gold and says it himself. That is a big waste of time. That is terrible. He shakes his head. He says it is not even quite 2 ounces a day. He says it is a big waste of time right there. The men around the scale do not argue with him. The number speaks for itself. A Nest crew member jumps in. He asks Rick if that even pays for what it has to pay for. Rick says no, not even. The crew member says it does not even start the list of things the operation has to pay for. Fuel, wages, equipment payments, food, diesel for the excavators, insurance, property. Lightning Creek itself. Rick agrees out loud. He says he cannot afford to be up here and not bring anything home. Another Nest crew member tells Rick that part of him knows this is new ground. The other part of him is hoping Rick can figure it out. He says if Rick goes broke, he goes broke. Rick says it has not happened yet. He says he does not intend for it to happen this year. Rick stands at the scale with his hands on his hips. He tells the camera he is wondering, right now, if he made the wrong decision. He says the part of him that knows this is new ground is fighting the part of him staring at 7.35 ounces. The question every miner is afraid to ask out loud is sitting on the table next to the gold. What if Lightning Creek does not pay? If you are watching this far in, hit the like button and subscribe. The next sections are where Rick has to make the call that decides the season. The 2-week countdown is already ticking, and the math on the next cut is the only thing standing between Nest mining and a deadline they cannot make. The ground is not the problem, the spot is. Rick takes a breath and reframes it for the crew. He tells them they have more than 100 claims on this block. The first cut he picked, the one Rocky just ran, was obviously the wrong spot to start.
We've got over 100 claims on this bunch here. So, that was obviously the wrong spot to start, but we can move on from that.
yeah, first gold way, we're done.
Yeah, let's go home.
That does not mean the gold is not in the valley. It just means he started in the wrong place. This is the moment a lot of crews fold. 4 days of running, 7.35 ounces in the safe, a 100-ounce deadline staring back at them, and a wash plant that already failed a bank test on its first day. Rick does not fold. He looks at the geography of his own ground and tells the crew the gold is somewhere on these 1,600 acres. They just have not found it yet. For Rick, this is a rare admission. He built his name on gut decisions and stubborn confidence. Now he is telling his own crew that his first call on Lightning Creek was a miss. He says they can move on from that. He tells them they are done with the first way and they are going home for the night. The plan changes. Rick decides to push north and work the valley cut by cut. He tells the crew they will probably work their way up this valley all season. Hopefully, the further they go or the more they run, the better it looks. He tells them the goal is to stumble into a hot pocket on ground that hides its gold in pockets. Rick reframes the workload for the crew. He says they cannot come into new ground and expect to hit the kind of numbers they used to hit. He says he knows it is going to be a learning deal. He says it is definitely still a risk. He says at the end of the day, if he knows the gold is there, they just have to make it pay off. Ryan Kent and the Ness crew take it in. They know Lightning Creek is different from anywhere they have mined before. It is up to them to prove the gold is somewhere on this block. Not the easy gold, the hard gold. The gold that takes weeks of trial and error to chase down a valley one cut at a time. A Ness crew member sums up the situation in plain language. He says they understand they are not mining the same kind of ground. It is different. It is up to the Ness crew to prove there is something here. He says it is going to be non-stop. He says he thinks this will be the toughest season they have ever had with Rick. The math has not changed. Rick still owes Troy Taylor 100 ounces in 2 weeks. He has 7.35 ounces in the gold safe. The next cut up, the valley has to do what the first one did not, and it has to do it fast. The countdown to 2 weeks. 14 days. That is the runway. Rick has 14 days to pull roughly 93 more ounces of gold out of Lightning Creek to make good on the second half of the deal with Troy Taylor. The first 4 days of running gave him 7.35 ounces. Hold that pace, and he finishes the deadline at around 26 ounces, leaving him roughly 74 ounces short. He cannot hold that pace. He has to triple it, at minimum, on ground that has just told him no. To put the deadline in plain numbers, Rick needs to roughly 13 times the production rate Lightning Creek just delivered. Every cut he runs from here forward has to outproduce the boulder cut by an order of magnitude. Every day he loses to a move, a breakdown, or another bank failure pushes the deadline closer to impossible. The arithmetic is unforgiving in either direction. To pull 100 ounces in 14 days, Rick needs 100 yards of dirt to give him roughly 7 ounces, not 1.84 ounces. That is not a small adjustment. That is a different valley. The next cut up the valley has to be that valley, or the deadline misses. Every day on the way to that deadline costs money. Diesel for the excavators, fuel for Rocky, wages for the crew, equipment payments that do not stop just because the wash plant is between cuts. The meter runs even on the days the plant is not running. Rick tells the camera that, in his own words, he cannot afford to be up here and not bring anything home. He says it has been a tough start to the season. He says he made a classic Rick move when he bought this ground out at Lightning Creek. He says people who know him know he does not have a whole lot of patience. A Ness crew member says it bluntly on camera. If Rick goes broke, they all go broke. There is no separate ledger for the crew.
I hope you can figure it out, because if you go broke, I go broke.
Lightning Creek is the whole season. If the next cut does not pay, the next 2 cuts have to. If those do not pay, the season is over before midsummer, and the deal with Troy Taylor turns into a problem nobody on this crew can solve. For a small operation like Nest Mining, payroll is not optional. The crew gets paid whether the wash plant runs or not. Diesel gets bought whether the cleanup is 40 ounces or 7. The lease on Lightning Creek does not pause for a bad cut. Every single line item runs in the negative until the gold catches up. And right now, 4 days into the season, Rick is staring at a 7.35 ounce cleanup in a season that needs 1,800 ounces to break even. Rick decides to move the next cut up the valley. Moving the wash plant burns days he does not have. Staying put guarantees another bad way. Both choices cost. He picks the one that gives him a chance. The crew packs up. Moving Rocky a second time is not a free decision. The wash plant is still 32 feet wide and 25 tons. The ground is still narrow. Lightning Creek is still on one side and the bank is still on the other. Every move is a chance for another sluice scrape, another close call, another delay before the plant fires up on a cut that may or may not pay. The whole season comes down to whether Rick can find a cut on this block that pays 1 ounce per 10 yards instead of 1 ounce per 50. That is the difference between a season that ends with a check to Troy Taylor and a season that ends with the gates locked. There is no in-between number that saves Lightning Creek. The next cut either pays at a different scale than the first one, or it does not. Rick tells the camera that at the end of the day, if he knows the gold is there, they just have to make it pay off. He says he is stubborn like that. He says he wants to do things his way, and that is just how it is going to be. He says he believes the gold is on this block. He just has to find the spot. The unanswered question is the one nobody on the Ness crew wants to say out loud. Is the gold even on this block? Or did Rick Ness just sign over 100 ounces of gold and promise another 100 for 1,600 acres of empty ground? The next cut up the valley is going to answer it, one way or the other. If you want to see what Rick pulls out of the next cut, and whether Nest Mining survives the 2-week deadline with Troy Taylor,
We already got a pile up there ready to run, and, we can actually run that now.
So what does that mean for this deal?
Well, that's a good point because we can't just walk away from this. I promised Troy another 100 ounces to buy Lightning Creek. I'm not just gonna pull 100 ounces out of here and give it to Troy and walk away. We've got to pull some serious gold out of here. But this is really good news.
hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment and tell me, did Rick make a mistake jumping into Lightning Creek without more testing? Is this the season that finally breaks the Nest crew? Or is the next cut up the valley going to be the one that saves everything? The next way is going to settle it. And the way this season is breaking, that next way might land before Rick can pay the man who sold him the ground. Lightning Creek is the gamble. The 2-week deadline is the clock. 7.35 ounces is the answer it gave him on day 1. The next answer comes on the next cut. And if that one looks anything like the first, the man who walked away from his old ground for a handpan and a hunch may not have a season left to walk back to. The countdown starts now.